Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session of Back to Basics. We are continuing with the topic of conclusions, which we have been discussing in the past three classes. We have discussed the theoretical aspect of conclusions. We also talked about inferences in the previous class. If you have not checked that out video, if you have not checked out that video, do check them out. And today we are going to do some practice questions on the topics of conclusion and inferences. So let's start our class without any further ado. I'll give you guys a quick refresher on inferences as well before we start with our practice of questions. So, as we discussed in the previous class, a conclusion that you draw about something using the given information that you already have about it is called an inference. That means there can be multiple inferences, but only one of them might be the actual conclusion, which you determine when you have the exact facts or the entire picture of facts. And remember, I gave you that car example where a car stops at a traffic light and you hear a loud sound, and then you draw possible inferences that it could be an accident, a tire burst, or anything else. But when you step out of that car and you check that it's actually a firecracker, that is when you make a conclusion. So, a conclusion that you draw just by using the information that you already have is called an inference. And it's using the observation and background and based on a logical understanding, examination of facts, and understanding what they suggest. And it helps us understand the implied meaning and gain a deeper understanding of what the author is trying to say. Now, some important points to keep in mind while solving questions on conclusions as well as inferences, that it should support the passage, it should not contradict the passage or the text given by the author. It should be well within the scope of the question. Now, remember, I'm saying the scope of the question and not the scope of the passage, because in a passage there can be multiple topics. The author could be talking about four different things. The question would be asking you about one specific thing. So you have to read the question very carefully. It should be within the scope of the question, and it should be relevant as well. It should not be relevant, your inference or your conclusion. And it should be synonymous with the degree of certainty. If the author is saying something with a lot of certainty, your answer would also have a lot of certainty, and vice versa. That is what that means. So I hope we all have a fair bit of understanding on how to approach conclusions and inferences. Let's start evaluating ourselves by practicing a few questions. Let's start with the first question, which is this. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to solve this on your own, and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay, I hope you guys are solving along with me. And if you're not, then please do bring a pen and paper and solve the questions along with me, because you won't do them later. Okay, let's read the question. Television programming experts maintain that with each 1% increase in the prime time ratings of a television station, there is a 3.5% increase in number of people who watch its evening news program. So we're talking about the station and the evening news program, and two percentages. 1% increase in the rating of the station means 3.5% increase in the viewership of the evening news program. However, in the last 10 years at channel NTR, there was only 1 year of extremely high prime time ratings, and during that year, fewer people than ever watched the channel NTR's evening news program. So there is a, you could say, irony here, or you could say dissonance here, and we have to find out which of the following conclusion is best supported by the information given above. The first option says the programming experts neglected to consider daytime news programs. Are daytime news programs even talked about? Are they even relevant? No, we just have details about the evening news program. So this is an irrelevant option and it would be wrong. The year of high ratings at NTR was a result of two hit shows which were subsequently cancelled because of contractual problems. Can you conclude this based on the information given to you that there were two hit shows and they were cancelled? No, we don't have any facts which suggest this, any evidence to conclude this. You need to have concrete evidence or facts to make a particular conclusion. And because we don't, we cannot really say this for sure as a conclusion. So both these options are wrong. The 10-year period in question is not representative of normal viewing patterns. Now, you might think that this is a valid conclusion, but again, we don't have enough information as to what is the correct time period to judge a normal viewing pattern or what exactly is normal viewing pattern. We don't know both of these things. So, again, a lot of uncertainty in terms of facts and therefore not the right conclusion. Option number D says prime time ratings are not the only factor affecting how many people watch an evening news program. Now, what is the problem in our passage? The problem is that with an increase in the prime time ratings, viewership of the evening program should increase. But in this case of NTR, when there was a year of high prime time rating, the viewership dropped. So, what could be the possible reason? What could be the possible conclusion out of this? That the only factor which is affecting the viewership is not the prime time rating. There could be other factors as in could be anything. The show was not well made. People did not like the theme of the show. People did not like the actors. There could be n number of reasons. But what we can say for sure is prime time ratings were not the only factor, because if they were the only factor, the proportionate increase should have been observed. With an increase in ratings, there should have been an increase in viewership. But that's not the case. So that means it was not the only factor which was impacting how many people watch it. And that is why this becomes the correct conclusion. I hope this makes sense. Okay, let's move to the second question. Let's see if you guys can do this one. All right, let's solve it. A strong correlation exists between what people value, and the way they act. For example, those who value wealth tend to choose higher paying jobs in undesirable locations over lower paying jobs in desirable locations. Thus, knowing what people value can help one predict their actions. Okay. Simple passage. Which of the following conclusion is best supported by the information given above? Knowing how people behave allows one to infer what they value. Well, it's quite the opposite. What people value allows us to infer how they behave rather than this. So, this is opposite to what the passage is trying to conclude. So, it won't be the right answer. No two people who value different things act the same way in identical circumstances. It's a little far fetched, a little out of scope, and we don't have enough information to say that two people who value different things would act in a certain way or not. Because, see, here we are talking about, let's take an example, that people who value wealth tend to choose higher paying jobs in undesirable locations. Now, it could be that some people who value comfort choose, let's say, higher paying jobs. They just don't want wealth, they also want comfort, they also want other things, they also want, let's say, privacy, whatever. So we cannot say no to people who value different things act the same way in identical circumstances. They can act in a different way in identical circumstances, even if they value the same things or not. So again, not the correct answer. People who value wealth tend to allow their desire for it to outweigh other concerns. Now, what are other concerns? Is it family life? Is it education? Is it their own health? We don't know, right? So how can we conclude that people who value wealth tend to allow their desire for it to overweigh other concerns? Some concerns, we can say that. Some concerns like desirable location, that is very well there. But we cannot make a blanket statement that they outweigh other concerns. So again, this would not be the correct answer. What people value can be a reliable indicator of how they will act. And that is what the passage also says. They give you an example. and say that knowing what people value can help predict their actions, and therefore we can conclude that what people value can be a reliable indicator of how they will act. This very well goes in line with what the passage is saying and seems like the correct conclusion. Okay, let's move to the third question. Let's solve this one. I'm giving you guys a few seconds to solve this. Let's do this quickly. Okay, let's start solving it. Some studies indicate that alcohol advertisements on TV cause people to increase their alcohol consumption. In Arcadia, however, there has been a ban on alcohol advertising for the last 10 years. Alcohol consumption per capita is at least as high as in those countries that do not have such ban in place. So that means the alcohol ban in Arcadia, television advertisement ban, is not really that effective, or probably that's not the only factor. We don't know. Let's see which of the following conclusion is best supported by the information given above. A says people tend to consume more alcohol if they are exposed to alcohol advertisements than if they are not exposed. No, not really. We cannot conclude that. In fact, the facts do not align with that as well. In fact, it says quite the opposite. So, wrong answer. Advertisement has no effect on whether people consume more or less alcohol. No, we cannot conclude that. It definitely has some effect. वरना क्यों ही चलाएंगे advertisement? Advertising cannot be the only factor that determines an individual's consumption of alcohol. This very well could be the right conclusion. Most people continued to consume alcohol after the ban was implemented. Again, we don't know most people and their alcohol consumption pattern after the ban or before the ban, so we don't have enough data on that. What we can conclude is that this advertising is not the only factor which is deciding the person would consume alcohol or not, because like we saw in the first question, if it were the only factor, then this ban on advertisement should have had some result, right? It should have resulted in a reduced per capita consumption of alcohol, but that's not the case. So option number C becomes correct here. Okay, let's do some more questions. Let's do one more. All right, let's check this out. Among the most effective ways to increase sales of an online service is to offer some form of free trial for users to experiment with before they purchase the full service. The benefit of such a practice is to encourage sales in individuals who would not buy the product without having tried it first. Which of the following is best supported by the information given above? Number of sales for a given online service is directly proportional to the number of visitors to the online services website, a number that tends to increase if a free trial is offered. A little far-fetched, but we can consider it. In calculating the total number of online service sold, free trials are generally included as $0 sales rather than a separate category. This is completely irrelevant, so wrong answer. Online services that are easily adapted to free trial versions sell better than do online services that are not really readily distributed as free trials. This seems like an appropriate answer. Number of people who see the free trial as an acceptable replacement for buying the online service is not greater than the number of people who buy the online service because of their experience within the free trial. Again, we cannot say this for sure. We don't have enough data to back this up. So option number C seems to be the correct answer. And that brings us to the close of today's class. I hope you guys got some gist of how do we approach questions on conclusions and inferences. We'll carry on this exercise of practicing more questions in the next session as well. So make sure that you stay tuned to the channel. Make sure you like this particular video if this was helpful. Make sure you watch all the previous three videos if you have not watched them yet. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And don't forget to press the bell icon as well, because we'll be bringing more such updates and videos for you in the future. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for participating. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Signing off.